Good morning, White Line agents. I'm glad we got some people here. This is a fun one to talk about, and hopefully everybody's going to watch this one because it is, unfortunately, a dirty, dirty side of what we do, and that is litigation, being sued, upset people coming at you with lawyers and all kinds of scary verbiage and letters and all this kind of stuff. And now this is an opinion piece that I'm going to say here on this next one, but 9 times out of 10 that I've heard, or the stories I've heard, or anything like that, it's always been um, usually, for lack of a better term, almost frivolous. Like yeah, there might be something wrong, but I'm trying to get $300,000 worth of damages on this $100,000 house I bought. It's usually really over exaggerated, so it comes out and it's always very, very scary. And so I just wanted to tell the story about what happened recently, how you can prevent that. Tell you a few other stories and kind of get your stories. I really want to hear what y'all have to say about yours, because this is how we learn, is by sharing these horrible, horrible stories. And this is the perfect venue to do it. So to share this story, I'll leave the agent's name out of it, but we had an agent sell a house. Okay. When the agent sold the house, they put the listing up, they did everything correctly. The guy finally buys the house. He does get it inspected, he does get it appraised, he does all of the normal things just to buy a house. Once he buys the house, he, according to our agent, he wanted to rehab it and retrofit it for like an Airbnb. So he did a whole lot of construction to it. Retrofitted it. And again, the story that I've heard is that he's not making the money on the Airbnb that he wants, thus brought around this lawsuit. Now, that's hearsay, so I don't know if that's true. But what his lawsuit stated is, what was the verbiage they used, Eric? The about us not accurately depicting it. What
It
was the
was
verbiage?
deceptive trade practice.
Deceptive trade practice. Thank you. So he is saying that White Line Realty and our agent participated in deceptive trade practices because when he got there, the square footage was not as large as he originally intended, or as large as it said in the MLS. It was short by like 300 square feet or something like that. So his original complaint is the $170 a square foot times that 300. What does that math come out to? I can't remember. Something. What is that? That's $51,000, which is not how you appraise things, and that's not how you find the value of a square footage, but fine, whatever. His second complaint was that once he started that the previous work on the property was not permitted. So he is saying that the city of San Antonio found out that the work was not permitted. He had to go in and make these massive corrections that cost him another, whatever it was, $125,000, something pretty insane. So basically, he's coming after us for $175,000. And he says that you need to do this because you deceptively practiced on this. If you do not pay us this money, by the way, guys, this was not, the letter that we received was not a service letter or a demand to come to court. It was simply a demand letter from the lawyer. And he says, because of these reasons, you owe us $175,000. If you do not pay us and we go to court, we will be seeking triple damages. So we're going to be trying to get 500 and whatever $1,000 out of you. Okay. That's a pretty scary letter to get. So how do we make sure that we don't get in these situations, and how do we, like, why did I not panic when I heard this whole thing? Well, first and foremost, it is not on the realtor or the broker to find out if work on the house was permitted. That is not our design, and nor did we represent that it was permitted. So nowhere in the listing, anything that they said, the contract, anything like that, did we say, hey, yeah, this is permitted, and we lied about it. That would be deceptive, which we didn't do. So nobody lied about that. He's just clutching at straws at this point. Plus, once again, it's beyond our scope. So don't freak out if you've noticed if there's a add-on or something like that that would require a permit, because that should come up in the seller's disclosures, and that is on the seller. So the seller, so right there, that's not our problem. We did not deceptively do this. The next thing he said is about the square footage. Now, that's a very interesting point to bring up, and I've done a little bit of research on this since then. So the square footage that is advertised, who protects our advertising is the MLS. The MLS is responsible for all advertising and stuff that comes through there. Coincidentally, he's trying to sue Sabor as well for projecting the wrong square footage. Now, for those of y'all that have ever done a listing, whenever you put the listing in, it will ask you for the square footage. 9 times out of 10, in my experience, it pulls that information from the county appraisal district. They go whoop, and just puts it back in there. But it also asks you, what is the square, or like, where did you get this information from? Okay. And I believe there's choices there. One is I got it from the county appraisal district. Two, I got it from an appraisal because an appraiser typically measures the size of a home. Or three, I measured it myself. Okay. Guys, never measure anything yourself. Okay. Do not measure anything yourself. That's just a recipe for disaster. There are companies that you can hire that specifically measure. We've had them on on our trainings before, so you can contact those guys, or just use the CAD. Now, in this particular instance, the agent said that there was a secondary building, and that the developer, the guy who built that building, or the contractor, said the square footage is this. So the information was not gained by us measuring; it was gained from the seller. So once again, that makes the seller responsible for that information. So, but the best thing that our agent did, which is something I do every single solitary time I put a listing up, is I said, listing, please verify room sizes, square footage, and schools. Okay. He put that in the agent remarks. And because he put that in the agent remarks, basically we get to say, you did not verify. And the other thing is he had 3 opportunities through the inspection process, through the appraisal, and then through looking at the CAD and the other information to verify that, yes, there were discrepancies. Do not get me wrong. But the appraisal and what the CAD said and what was on SABOR, those 3 things were different. But our agent did tell him, you need to verify the square footage. He didn't. Okay, so basically this is a cash grab. So today's lesson, that one right there, he's willing to hire a lawyer because he spent way more money on this property that's not producing anything, and he's clutching at straws. His strategy, I'm almost certain of, again, this is speculation, I'm guessing on this, is to sue us, get our insurance company involved, and somehow at some point get them to settle. Like, okay, we don't want to do this. We will, give you $25,000 or whatever it is just to go away. And I know that because I have a friend of mine who's an inspector, and he gets those kind of lawsuits all the time. You didn't tell me this ceiling fan was bad, and that cost me $20,000. And he's like, and he gets really frustrated because every time, because you have to turn that into your insurance company, and every time the insurance company settles because they just don't want the fight. And Phil, my buddy's like, he's like, dude, it's right here. It says this thing does not work, and whatever it is, right? So, guys, this is a tactic, and it is a scary tactic. So the whole thing I think about as I do things as a realtor is to cover my ass. CYA all day long, because people are trying to do this. And if you're really trying to grow your real estate business, that means you're doing marketing to people that you don't know very well. You may just get some rando that comes in off the street, and you don't know their past, their history, if they're highly litigious kind of people, if they're scary or weird or whatever it is. So always be careful, but always CYA. The big things on the CYA, guys, because what's going to happen next is, because SABOR is getting involved in this, they are going to come over and they're going to come look at everything that was put with it. And more than likely, TREC's going to end up involved in this situation. Okay. So we're going to have TREC coming down here. Does anybody want to know the first thing that TREC asks for every time there's some sort of issue? Does anybody have a guess on that? It's the stupidest thing, but it's always the first thing they ask for.
Seller's disclosure?
Nope. But they do ask for the seller's disclosure. They are going to ask for that. They always ask for the IABS. Have you done the IABS? They love finding people for not getting the IABS signed. Okay, guys, reminder, first substantive conversation. I keep a stack of those in my truck. Okay. Every mailer I send out, they have an IABS. I have more IABSs floating around in the world than I guarantee probably any agent ever. So make sure you have your IABS. Make sure you do that one. Second one is you want to make sure that you have a representation agreement, that you have agreed with these people, because if not, you don't have any right to put it in the MLS. So you're going to get in trouble from SABOR, and you're going to get in trouble from TREC if you do not have your representation agreement. Guys, exclusive right to sell is going to trump exclusive agency. I'm not going to get into that, but use the exclusive right to sell. If you are listing, use the buyer's representation agreement if you're helping a buyer. That's the second thing they're looking for. In this particular case, guys, seller's disclosures. That's going to be huge, because the seller will disclose whether or not he put permits on there, and it's going to hang that guy, not our agent. Because again, when it comes to seller's disclosures, you are not allowed to fill them out. You cannot do it. Just don't fill it out. Don't put the address on the top of the page. Do not even touch it. For those of y'all that don't know, sellershield.com, I use it all the time. You send it to them, they fill it out, comes back to you, print the PDF out, and stick it in your listing. You're done. Okay, guys. So always make sure you got your IBS, your listing agreement, and the seller's disclosure whenever you're selling a property, because that's going to put the onus of this issue on him, which is great. Okay. So any questions about this quick story that I just told you? Because I want to tell you another couple stories and then I want to hear yours. Nothing else. All right, here's my scary story. This is the scariest one I have. I bought a property subject to, and I don't want to get into the sub two legalese stuff, but for those of y'all that don't know, it means that I had the property deeded to me, but I left the mortgage in the lady's name. Okay. And she was paying me rent. I would pay the mortgage. All right. That was going on for a while. She got into some financial trouble. They were going to foreclose on her house. It didn't make enough sense for me to purchase the entire house, but I was like, hey, let me get you out of Hawk, and let me get you out of Hawk, and then we'll do this, and I'll buy the house from you in a year or so when it made more sense. She ran a daycare out of there. I was diligent enough to make sure she was bonded and insured and had her state certificates and all that kind of stuff because she's running a business out of her house. One day she stopped paying rent. I give her the 3-day notice. I go down there to put it on there. The place looks kind of abandoned, but obviously I can't go in. It's a 3-day notice. That goes by. We call for a court date. As I'm waiting for the court date to come up, she has been unresponsive. No emails, no phones, no nothing. And then one day I get a letter in the mail from a lawyer. And what had happened is she ran that daycare, and there was a child that died in the house while she was daycaring, while she was in charge, right? Now, terrible situation. The letter that I got was very similar to the one that we just got today. This is what happened. You own the house. You need to agree to, I think they wanted me to agree to pay for all medical bills and autopsies and this and that, and all kinds of stuff. And I could not figure out for the life of me how this was involved me. Okay. Once again, guys, if you get a scary letter like this, please understand, never panic. It is the worst thing you can do. My heart immediately jumped into my throat. First thing I wanted to do was find that lady and write her a letter, send her flowers, something, because as a parent, you never want to hear. And it was a 9-month-old little girl. She died of SIDS. They just put her down for a nap. She just didn't wake up. And autopsy verified. There's, needless to say, I got dragged into a lot of court cases on this thing. So nobody was really at fault, but everybody's clutching for straws, right? And they're trying to find something. So guys, my advice on that one is if you have rental properties, don't let them run businesses out of them. If you do, make sure they are bonded, insured, licensed, whatever it takes for that particular business. Be very careful about that. And to tag onto that, I have a 6-plex right now that's got a barber shop in one corner, and the rest are residential, which is legal because it's zone C3, doesn't matter, whatever. But don't use mixed use because your taxes go up, your insurance goes up, your interest rates go up. I'm paying like 9% interest rate on that on permanent financing because it's mixed use. So avoid that if you can. I know Eric does a lot of them, but I think if you go straight commercial, it's a lot easier when it comes to all those costs. So there's my second story of scary things. Eric, do you have any stories you want to share and what you learned from them going through these legal battles? Because you've been at this game longer than I have.
I've only been, I've been sued twice. Well, I've been sued once. This will be my second time. And then I was on the other end. I was the guy sending the scary letter recently. So there was one where it was a lot in Canyon Lake. I told the guy I would accept his offer. He never sent me any paperwork. He never sent me anything. I then had someone else call and offer me more money. I signed their paperwork. The next morning he reaches out and says, hey, where do I go drop off this contract? And I'm like, I already signed a contract with someone else. He got pissed and went to Trek and all that fun stuff. And Trek calls, and just like you said, I want to see this, I want to see that. They don't even ask how are you doing and how's the weather. It's like, give me all this now. And so I sent them screenshots of text messages, screenshots of emails, and basically it just disappeared. They basically replied to that guy like, you know, there's nothing here. There's no contract. There's no money. There's no nothing. You know, it was just a text message that said, you know, yeah, great. Well, you know, you can have it. Um, anyways, so that was one of them in a nutshell. I mean, it was scary as shit, and it was longer than that. The other
Well,
one, what's up?
I was going to say, I want to interject real quick because Eric made a very good point that I really wanted to. He said when Trek called him, they didn't ask how he was doing anything like that. Where's my damn documents? Right? That's right how they came out the gate. Ladies and gentlemen, Trek does not support realtors. They support the general public. They assume you are wrong and evil and are trying to take advantage of the poor dumb people running around there just throwing money at houses. You've got to work like that. You've got to be scared all the time. Because Trek, even if Trek comes to you, oh, the Trek will fix this. They're looking at you. What'd you do wrong? They're waiting for you to screw up. Sorry, Eric, go ahead.
No, that was it. I mean, basically, they sent me this email with this, you know, list of stuff in a very short timeline, and they were like, "We need all this now." And I
Yeah.
mean, I was running scared, and we had just started White Line, and I was like, "Oh my God, like, you know, what's going on?" Like this. Anyways, you know, your emotions run high and your head spins. So I got through that one. You know, that taught me a lot about just making sure that you have copies of everything, that you know, don't delete text messages and emails, and, you know, keep everything you can, because if they ask, they're going to want to see it all. The next
That
side,
that right there, guys. I'm going to say it again. Sorry to interrupt, Eric. You've got to
no,
do
you're
not
fine.
delete your text messages. If you are on an email server, if you're using Gmail or something like that, everything needs to be archived, not deleted. Okay. Statute of limitations is 4 years. It's going to bog up your email sooner or later, but after 4 years, you can delete them. Okay. Every conversation, text message, make sure anything that has anything to do with business, try and get it in writing. Try not to tell things over the phone, because you really get the he said, she said. Follow up with an email. Hey, thanks for the call today. Here's what I heard. Right. So that way everybody's very clear, because you, like I said, if something goes sideways, you don't know, you know how Karen's just come out of the woodwork. Like, whoa, where'd you come from? I'm suing you. Oh, Jesus, what happened? So you got to save all this stuff, guys. Don't worry yourself where it's like, I have folders for everything, but I do have folders. Eric, go ahead and finish that up real quick. Finish what you were going to say. I'm sorry I interrupted.
No, you're good. So yeah, so that was that side. You know, like I sent them all the documentation, and you know, it was sketchy because number one, I didn't want any sort of bad blood. And I mean, there's more to it. The guy was playing hardball. He's like, "I'm gonna give you 20,000." I'm like, 25, and he's like, "No." And then he went back and forth and back and forth. And I finally, he came back at like 23 or whatever. And I was like, "All right, fine. I'll do 23. I'll send you a contract." Well, then, so I sent him the contract, and then he never signed it, you know. And I messaged him that next morning or something like that, and he basically ignored me. And then, you know, a realtor called me, and we signed a contract right then and there. Then he finds out that I told him that I did it, and then he goes and signs the contract and tries to say that, you know, I was being bad. But Trek said no, I did everything I was supposed to do. So the next one, I was the guy sending the scary letters, and it's on a lot in Floresville that had an encroachment. When I bought the property, they gave me a survey. There was no encroachment on the survey, and you know, you couldn't tell that the mobile home was encroaching because it was just a vacant lot with the mobile home next to it. Anyways, come to find out, you know, I go to sell it. They find out the mobile home's encroaching. So I go after everyone. You know, I'm like pissed. I go after the seller. I go after the survey company, and I go after the person living there. I mean, I spent a fortune on attorney fees, sent all these, you know, demand letters like what we got, and everyone just basically ignored me. I even took them to court. I even took them to court, and they still ignored me. Didn't even show up. And the court system didn't do shit about it. Like they didn't care. You know, they're like, okay. Finally, we go to the JP court, and the lady that's living in the mobile home shows up. The court looks at all the documents, you know, and says, yes, you are right, Eric. She is encroaching. Here's your letter stating that. And I'm like, yes. you know, and I'm waiting for the cops to roll up and you know, make her move. But they didn't. They don't enforce anything. They just gave me a piece of paper that says I was right and she was wrong, and you know, y'all figure it out on your own. So long story short, I end up just giving her that strip. I was like, this is ridiculous. Like this whole court system is ridiculous. Like I have sent demand letters. The survey company isn't doing anything. I try to sue the survey company. Well, you can't sue them because you can only sue the person that went out there and did the survey, and he doesn't have insurance because he's just. Needless to say, I went round and round and round and round, and I just finally called my survey guy and was like, put a foot on the other side of her mobile home, survey it, and then I had an attorney just deed it over to her. Didn't even tell her about it and just moved on. It's now for sale again, but
How about
that's
the title
why.
company?
Title company,
Uh-huh. Isn't
because
that
it was
kind of
an
what they're ensuring that you got the land that you said you thought you were buying? They
yep,
don't.
but it was an existing survey from a previous transaction. And so the only way that I could have held anyone's feet to the fire, and you know, lesson learned, I bought it from a wholesaler, you know, close quick, we need money, we're closing tomorrow. Okay, let's go. I did not get a T47. I did not get any of that. You know, so they showed me the survey. I looked at it. It's a lot. You know, I bought 100 of them before. So it looks great. Let's go. And I couldn't hold anyone's feet to the fire. I could go after the survey company, but you know, my attorney's like, hey, you know, this is a $40,000 lot. It's going to cost you 20 grand to go to court, like to go to real court, not just
Mhm.
JP court. And I was like, yeah, that's definitely not worth it. So,
Well,
you know,
I'm proud of you for I'm proud of you for keeping your uh composure and not, because that I would have been just like burn them down. I don't care.
Yeah.
So
well,
It's
check
my
this out.
property. I'm gonna burn it down if I want to.
Yeah. Well, so check this out. So when I got that letter, I went to the city because her electric pole was on my side. And the city was like, you're going to have to take us to court. Like, we're not going to go move that. And the whole thing came down to, you know, it was like an 80-year-old lady living there, and no one wanted to be the guy on the news moving this lady's mobile home, cutting off her power. And so everyone was just like, sue me, you know, sue me, sue me, sue me, take me to court, force me to do it. Even the city. Crazy.
So that this is the fun part of the conversation, guys. The guy that bought the house in the first story that we said is very litigious. Like, he was trying to find a way to get that money back out of the property, right? So he's like, screw it, I'm just going to sue everybody. So you have people that are like that. You have people on the other side, like the city of Floresville here, where it's like, yeah, go for it. You know what I mean? It is an extremely arduous process, and you've got to have a lot of persistence to be able to pull this off, especially if your claims are baseless, like that first story. So you got to be careful, guys, because you never know who's going to do it. And the next story I want to tell you is about a company that does this kind of crap that really drives me crazy, because I've heard of this story multiple times from different realtors. Is it's photographers. Photographers will take pictures of these houses. We go buy these professional houses, right? And what they will do, what a new trend is they don't give you the photos. They lease them to you. You can use them for this property, but I'm retaining the copyright on it. That is my intellectual property. Copyright laws are pretty definite. Y'all know that, right? The stupid part about this is now you can, you can do reverse searches on Google, right? You can take an image and you can put it into Google and it'll tell you where that image came from. Like, oh, here it is, found it, right? So these guys are taking these. So once they realize that you're like, hey, I leased it to you for 6 months. So on the 7th month, I'm going to reverse search these things. And there's like so many people get popped because, it was a house flipper and they wanted to use that front elevation photo again. So they took it off the old listing and put it on this new listing. That's not yours. It's copyright infringement. Now you're busted. And he sues. And he, like the one guy I heard of, he comes in, he's like $50,000. And then what do? You call your insurance company, he ends up settling for 10 grand. So he, instead of making $300 to make that photo shoot, he made 10 grand because he's a pain in the ass. And that's what they do. The second problem with that, guys, is again, Sabor or any of your MLSs, especially Central Texas, God, those guys watch their MLS so close. If you're in Central Texas MLS, guys, be careful. I don't think I've ever listed a house without getting a $25 fine for something. So like, if you take an old Sabor picture, which I know we've all seen this, because they put that Sabor copyright 2023 in the bottom corner, and you use that for the next listing, Sabre will find the crap out of you. Central Texas will find the crap out of you. So don't be lazy with your photos, guys, and make sure you very clearly understand whether or not you are using photos that you can use. You know what I mean? Have I bought them? Am I leasing them? How long is the lease? You got to make sure you understand all that. And also, we had somebody make a funny post. I know Eric shared it. I shared it because I thought it was funny. But it was a picture of Dak Prescott from the back, so you couldn't see his face, but you could tell it was him, right? And he was holding his phone. Sorry, I got to do this like this, kind of like backwards where the face was showing. And somebody put like the White Line logo with their picture on it and go, oh my God, I think Dak's trying to call me, right? Being funny. I had another friend of mine who works in the real estate sector send me that because I shared it, and he screenshot it and sent it back to me. And he goes, hey, there was somebody that got popped and got sued by Eva Longoria for doing the same crap. So again, they ended up settling, but it still cost that agent like 20 grand, I think is what he told me. It was a lot of money for a goof, right? For just like, oh, but you can't use somebody's likeness, right? Again, these people, they're so well lawyered up, and you know how it is nowadays. You can search a person's face across the internet and be like, I didn't approve that marketing. And especially celebrities, they get paid to market. So you know what? I might as well go after you for marketing without my permission. So that's another thing I've heard about in the real estate world that you got to be real careful of. But what about you guys? Anybody got a good story about somebody who got sued in real estate or something fun?
I don't know. If it's a fun story. It's a very short one. I was working for another realty. It was like my first 3 months off, and one of the agents that was there did exactly that, where they just got lazy and took the pictures from the previous. So it was a canceled listing that they were relisting, and they used all of the same pictures, and they were sued by the previous agent for $10,000. They ended up just sending 5,000 and called it quits.
Now, guys, is the I'm going to round up the half a day it takes you to drive over there and take pictures and come back. Let's say it took 4 hours. I don't think any of y'all are making 5,000 or whatever that'd be, $12.50 an hour. It's not worth it. Just drive over there and get your own pictures. Don't try to be lazy. It bites you in the butt every time.
Yeah, but it's funny because it was the realtor, not the photographer, that sued him.
Yeah, and probably would have won, right? Or at least got $5,000 out of it.
Yeah.
I don't understand what realtors have time to go back and look at. I mean, maybe I would if I lost the listing and I was bitter about it. But
yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it was. It's the customers say you're not selling it, buy, I'm getting someone else, and then they just went after that someone else.
Yeah, I just had a client do that to me. He wanted. It's a friend of my wife's. He's like, hey, can you rent this property for me? I'm like, sure. And I did not. I mean, I had it in Central Texas, Sabor, signs around the neighborhood, sign in the yard, Facebook, Craigslist, apartments.com, Zillow. I mean, there was nowhere else I could have put this thing. Couldn't rent it. And he finally, he was like, hey, man, this other realtor tells me he can do it. I'm like, dude, I get it. 100% understand. Guys, don't get your feelings hurt. That's another way to start shit. Just like, hey, I got it, man. Boom, canceled. Took everything down. It wasn't worth. I think I was going to get paid like $500 for renting it. It's not worth the $500 to have him pissed off at me, right? It's just not worth it. Not a problem. Completely understand. Keep my lockbox. I was like, I'm not even driving back over there, you know? So try to leave people in a good mood. That's for sure. I thought we'd have way more stories about this because I feel like I hear tons of them.
I don't have a story, but what's funny is buyer's rep. I guess I was taught, was with the same company for a long time, but I was taught we don't do buyer reps, right? We didn't have them signed because if you don't want to work with me, I don't need a piece of paper, basically, is what we were told. In a sense, we don't need a piece of paper. If you don't want to work with me, you don't want to work with me, but we always got listing agreements. So it's funny.
Yeah, so
I will do buyer agreements now.
Yes, you definitely need to do buyer representation agreements. And guys, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, I'm going to back up just a little bit. It says buyer tenant representation agreement. because you can also use that one if you're helping somebody find an apartment or someplace to rent, right? So they're interchangeable. So don't get confused with that. Second thing is honestly, that's foolish that they told you don't worry about it. Yes, to their point, anytime somebody does not want to work with you, all they have to do legally is inform you in writing. If they send you an email saying, hey, we're done,
Yeah.
then that buyer's rep agreement is out the window. Okay. If you have a listing agreement, especially an exclusive right to sell, you're going to have a protection period after that.
Yeah.
And whatever you put in there, I usually put 90 days.
Yeah.
Okay. And that protection period is if you brought the person, right? Well, we'll get into all that later or watch one of my previous videos.
Yeah.
But that buyer tenant rep, because if
Tell your bandit story.
Oh my God, I will. Well, yeah, this is a good one. But the buyer tenant rep agreement, sorry, that is a good one. You got me off track. If you run into a real pain in the ass title company, they will want to see it because otherwise you're not getting paid. You don't have a representation agreement. I've had title companies ask me that. Like, do you have that? Because otherwise we can't pay you because who are you, right? They don't know who you are. Just because your name's on the contract doesn't mean you have a right to get paid on it. And they're also making sure that they're not selling an exclusive right to sell or things like that, right?
Gotcha.
But to Eric's point, I was listing a house. Oh, go
Can I
ahead.
add something else to the agreement? Is it also in there indicates what you're going to be making as far as commission, and it's helped me in the past because I tell them I'm going to be paid 3%, and if it also has a paragraph in there that if you don't get your 3%, that you can make them responsible. Obviously, I'm not gonna, but because we put it in there and we have that opportunity to have that conversation. Whenever you have a house that's listed at 1% or something like that, they'll be like, oh no, let's not look at that one. Like it comes out of them instead of you, so you're not being shady saying, let's not look at that property because I'm only going to get 1%, but they're looking out for your benefit saying, oh, let's not look at that one because you only get 1%. I don't want to pay you 2%. Let's look at that other one that gives you the full 3%. So
I think where it was coming from was good, where it was like, we don't really need it if, you're going to want to work with me. I don't need a piece of paper showing that you're going to want to work with me. You either are or you're not. And that's where that was coming from. But, and I realize that some, other brokerages, I'm brand new with Whiteline, so I will definitely do that. But I found that interesting to.
Yeah. So a few things. Number one, I use that exact verbiage when I have people sign it. I'm like, hey, look, I have to have this signed. It's a legal thing.
Yeah.
I said, if you choose not to work with me, all you got to do is tell me in writing and it's null and void. Okay. So I give them that out. Right. Okay. Second thing is I cannot wait until something happens with Trek and they go down there and do all that because they are going to get hanged because Trek does not take that lightly. And number three is, yeah, you have to do it here at Whiteline. I know you're new, but we have something called a Susie. And Susie goes through and checks all the things. And if you don't have it signed, you're not getting paid. So make sure you get one of those. So, and then the bandit story, this one, oh my God. And like Eric and I talked about it ad nauseum and he's laughing at me because I screwed up. And that was even what I said. I was like, I screwed up because it was an expensive property. It was almost $1 million, like 975 or something like that. Right. And I'm like, okay, I'm excited. It's out at the Bandit. If y'all are familiar with Seguin, it's kind of out in the middle of nowhere, beautiful community, but it's kind of hard to get people to move out there because you're a long way from an HEB. You're a long way from everything, right? So it's kind of a weird thing to sell. So I told them it might be a while. I signed a 1-year listing agreement with them. Okay. I showed it. Didn't sell in the full year. Okay. I forgot to put a notice in my calendar. Was it 6 months? Maybe it was a 6 months listing agreement. I think it was 6 months. A year seems long. I forgot to put a reminder in my calendar that when that 6 months is up, I need to get them to renew it because it terminates. Okay. A few more months go on. I put 60 days in the protection period. I'm still showing it. I show it to this one lady who's also a realtor, which really complicated the process, who wanted to buy it. Okay. I was like, great. She was like, oh, never mind. So when I had to call my client and tell him she said, never mind, they're like, Colin, we need to get somebody else. I'm like, you got to be okay. I understood. They were friends of mine. I get it. It broke my heart, but you know what? I'm going to let this thing go. I let the thing go. The new lady that they hired had not even put it in the MLS. Okay. She hadn't even gotten photos taken yet. And that other client comes back to me and says, okay, yeah, I'm ready to buy it. I changed my mind. I do want to buy it. Sends me the contract. Here's the problem. I don't have a listing agreement anymore. I'm past my protection period. The lady hasn't even put it in the MLS, but she's got a listing agreement. And it was an exclusive right to sell. So now I have to hand that contract over. I want you to think about it, guys. It was like $27,000 in commission.
Ugh.
And I did not have a leg to stand on. And I called everybody I could think of, like, guys, somebody's got to know some back, like page 742, subsection B of the Texas real estate. Like, there's got to be something. And I mean, I didn't have a leg to stand on. And so then I went to the other realtor that I handed the contract to, and I was like, hey, I feel like you owe me like at minimum half of this. She was like, no. I think she wrote me a check for $250 or something, something just insultingly low. And I was so mad. Oh, I was mad because I had taken professional photos. I had professional videographers go through there. I had drone video footage. And needless to say, I've marketed the ever living hell out of this thing. And, you know, I probably spent $2 to $3 grand trying to get this thing out there.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah. So those things are important, guys.
Yeah. Listings are
they're-
different. Listings are much different.
They're very
I'll
different.
always
And,
have that. Yeah.
yeah, and I will never
An agreement.
forget to put in my calendar like when listing
No.
agreements end, so I can. Because I
Yes.
just, it was a friend of mine. It was a friend of mine's dad. They're their parents. You know what I mean? I was like, whatever, they'll use me. And I got complacent, guys, and it bit me in the ass hard. $27,000. You learned some valuable lessons.
Yeah.
That was an expensive one. Could have gone to college. I mean, what is that? Like a year's college, right? I could have been working on my master's. Let's do it. All right. Well, unless anybody else has got any stories, I kind of was hoping for a bigger story time because I love hearing those kind of like crazy reasons people are getting hung.
No, I'm thankful. I'm thankful I don't have any stories.
Yeah, it's a it's a stressful thing. Don't get me wrong; it's very stressful because one of two things that happen: either you're going to end up owing a lot of money, or nothing's going to happen. Right? There's no in between. They're never like, "Hey, give me $25, we'll call it a day." That never happened. So it does get a little stressful.
Cool. Well, then I have a couple
right.
of rep agreements I need to get to you all then.
Yeah,
Jeez.
and that's what's great about Dotloop, guys. It's all in there. Just hit autofill and go. Yep. All right. Well, if y'all are good, I'm good. I'm gonna start
Right.
pulling some comps. I got some contracts to write.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you guys for being here. Y'all have a great Wednesday.
Colin.
You too.
Thank you. All right. Bueno, bye.